VP of sentiment of what happened over the last 48 hours. Microsoft shares higher, flirting with a fresh record high, basically reversing the last-minute drop they had Friday when news broke in the last 15 minutes of the session that OpenAI's board had fired Sam Altman. Analysts very positive on the developments, which are principally, as it stands, Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, who was chairman of the board of OpenAI, have joined Microsoft in order to lead this new AI research unit. We will get into that later in the show. What you can't see is what's playing out in private markets. And trust me, there is a lot playing out in private markets. We will get that detail later in the show. But as we speak, there are hundreds of OpenAI staff that are taking action. Let's break down the news with Bloomberg's Rachel Metz, who is joining me on set in San Francisco, having stayed up with me all weekend to break this story. What do we know about what's happening inside OpenAI HQ?
Right now, it sounds like the majority of the company's employees have said that they will leave if their demands are not met. They are really upset about this ousting of Sam Altman and then the subsequent resignation of Greg Brockman.
So the numbers, I think, are that 599 out of 770 staff. In other words, the vast majority of staff have signed this letter. Whose side are the staff on here? I mean, this is hard to understand, but we're talking about everyone other than those that have departed already.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what I thought was really interesting when I saw this letter early this morning is that it makes it very, very clear whose side most of the employees are on. Like, I think before there was a sense that a lot of people were on Sam Altman's side, but it wasn't crystal clear. This is saying, hey, almost all of us, are very angry, so angry we're willing to leave our jobs at what has been the world's leading independent AI company.
Rachel, number 12 took my eye on the list of those who have signed this letter. Is Ilya Sutskever, who is on the board, who made the calls, we understand through all of your guys' reporting, made the calls to Sam Altman and Greg himself to basically let them know that they're no longer going to be at the company.
Yeah, that's really a bit confusing, right? I mean, at first I was like, but, it's been a really long day that's lasted 3 days. So yeah, I mean, I think he tweeted, I think it was this morning, that he made a mistake, right? And I don't think he wants the company to explode. Perhaps he didn't anticipate what the consequences would be of the actions he was taking.
And no wonder we are getting so much views and theories being shared, ultimately about corporate governance. We'll go into that much more later in the show, Rachel. But I'm interested in also, ultimately, who's being drafted in to replace it. How on earth does the new CEO of OpenAI try to ensure that we don't have this mass departure?
That is an excellent question. So the person who was named very late yesterday as the new CEO by the board, Emmett Shear, he was a co-founder of the video game streaming service Twitch, which is also, of course, been used for all kinds of streaming at this point. Emmett is more on the conservative side of technology development in the sense that he is in favor of slowing things down somewhat, which is what Ilya had been also pushing. So sort of, aligned with the board members then and with Ilya, he's going to probably have to do a lot of convincing to the staff if he wants to get them to stay with him in charge. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next, I was about to say days, but let's say hours.
Well, let's recap. It's only been 48 hours, essentially, maybe more, since news broke that Sam Altman had been fired. This is the timeline of what happened. You and I and all of our colleagues spent most of the weekend with everyone else thinking, Sam's coming back, this is happening, based on the reporting since. Explain to us what actually happened and the chronology of events.
So how far back do you want me to go here?
Gosh, let's say start with Sam being fired on Friday.
Okay, on Friday, we were told that Sam had been fired by the board, which I think came as a shock to probably pretty much anybody except for the board. Once that happened, it was a scramble to figure out, what happened here? Did something really bad happen? It sounded very mysterious. And information started coming from OpenAI executives themselves in the form of memos they were sending internally that the board has not told us of any malfeasance, for instance, which I I think was the word used in a memo that Brad Lightcap sent out to staff. Yeah, CO, thank you. So then it started to sound like Mira Murati, who was named interim CEO, she had been the chief technology officer and increasingly a prominent figure at the company alongside Sam. It sounded like perhaps she was going to rehire Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, who had been also at the company and quit after Sam was ousted. Then in a last-minute twist, it sounded like Emmett Shear was hired, and now everybody has signed this letter, or not everybody, but most people have signed this letter saying, we're going to join this company that Microsoft is now creating that Sam and Greg are going to run. So if you don't bring them back, essentially. So I don't know about you guys, but I keep just kind of turning left and right. I'm not really sure what's going to happen next year.
Whiplash and a whole lot of discussion on what is meant to be a holiday week. Rachel Metz, we thank you so much for making time for us when I know you've just been at the grindstone with your reporting. We thank you so much. And look, we just finished where, well, Rachel was discussing where next for Microsoft as it sets up this new AI focus point. What is the impact on the publicly traded company? What of Satya Nadella and really his ability to turn this story around in the final few hours? Joining us is Jefferies senior internet analyst Brent Thill. Brent, you got a rating on Microsoft, $400 price target. Is this a positive as it stands?
As it stands, it's a win-win for Microsoft. I mean, they get the number one up-and-coming individual in tech leading AI journey. And then secondarily, they've been talking about this for a long time. How do they reduce their independence on one vendor like OpenAI and spread their AI bets across open source, across their own languages, across other languages? And we think that Altman can probably steer that ship in a really good way from internally at Microsoft. Obviously, from a hiring perspective, if you've got over 500 people signing a petition that feel this strong, I've never seen this in my coverage of tech in 20 years. Where literally 500 people sign a letter internally. You've never seen this in tech, ever. So if they feel that strongly about him, and he says, "Hey, would you like to come over here to Microsoft?" Like, what's the talent pool of Microsoft going to look like? 2 months from now, it's going to be insane.
Well, Brent, the question that I hear out in the market is, will Microsoft buy out the rest of OpenAI? Can Microsoft buy out the rest of OpenAI?
I don't know if they can. They obviously have an $11 billion plus stake, so they care for the future. They want to ensure this happens. My view is actually OpenAI will get effectively that board settled down, we'll get the employees settled down, and hopefully keep everyone in place. And I don't know their incentive structure, but I'm not sure that I'd want to lose all my incentive comp and stock options in OpenAI just because I'm upset the CEO left. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So my sense is this ship will be calmed at OpenAI. Microsoft, via Nadella, he's the best negotiator in tech. He'll figure out a way to ensure that they keep this intact, keep their investment preserved, but also have the best of having Sam and team there. So I look at I think there's going to be a better outcome hopefully for OpenAI and their employees, where they can get some additional board members in and get them calmed down. I understand why they're as upset, but again, I can't recall a story in 20 years where that many people signed a petition would walk out. I think that you're going to end up seeing a situation where there's a middle ground that's met, and that hopefully both camps survive peacefully, and we move on, and we can all enjoy our Thanksgiving week.
Do you think Microsoft remains the key player in AI? Therefore, can they remain basically still having the distance between themselves and ultimately the viewpoint that Alphabet's behind, for example?
Microsoft's crushing it. I was up at the Microsoft Developer Conference in Seattle last week, and you can barely get in to see some of these demos. The pace of innovation is like nothing I've seen covering tech for 20 years. You talk to product managers that are not spokespeople for Microsoft, they talk about the pace of innovation. I mean, we're talking about months of when they said it was go time to launch a product. Now, the product isn't perfect. It's not gonna be the smoothest ride out of the gate. But the level of innovation is beyond anything we have seen in any time I've spent covering Microsoft, even as a developer of Microsoft in the 90s. This pace of innovation is off the charts. They are so far ahead of everyone else. And we do believe that Amazon is gonna also be in the mix. So our thesis is Amazon and Microsoft win the enterprise, Google wins the consumer market. They're very different markets, but all three will have a seat at the table.
All right, Jeffrey, senior internet analyst Brent Hill on the Microsoft side of this story. Coming up on the program, we will continue the conversation on Sam Altman, on OpenAI, as hundreds